This morning I thought about just skipping the sermon because we had a guest speaker and it was Bible Camp Sunday, and I just said, well, why don't you just take the whole sermon and do that? But then I looked, it was my favorite Bible verse in the whole Bible, so I couldn't skip it. So you're at least going to get a mini sermon today, all right? And I'm going to give you half a sermon today, and the other half we'll pick up next week. So next week is a sermon and a half, all right? No, all right, so Luke 15, hands down, my favorite chapter of the Bible. Right? No contest. It begins like this. These are the words from verse 1 here. It says, tax collectors and sinners were all crowding around to listen to Jesus. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law of Moses started grumbling. This man is friendly with sinners. He even eats with them. Let me pause there. There's two kinds of people in the world, right? There's those who think there's two kinds of people and those who don't, all right? Those who think that there's two kinds of people need to make distinctions between us, right? There needs to be good and bad, or right or wrong, or saint or sinner, or winner or loser, or them or us. If you're going to have two kinds of people, you need to somehow decide what kind of person you are and who isn't you. All right? In order to do that, you have to measure, you have to keep score, you have to know where you stand. Most of us are those kind of people, right? Remember, as a teenager, we had a big victory last night. Yay, Prescott! All right, with basketball. I remember after I was a big marching band person, and after the victory, we'd go yelling around town, we're number one, and do all this kind of stuff. We don't go out there and yell. We just like to get out there and play. We don't care who wins. No one shout. We shout when we're number one. All right. Can you imagine sports where there were no scoreboards? All right. If we didn't keep track of the numbers at all, if there was no profit or loss, if there was no your turn and then my turn, how would we know the value of something if we couldn't measure it? It would be disconcerting, to say the least. It would be a little crazy. It would change how we do so many things in our world. Now you know why the Pharisees and the religious leaders were so upset with Jesus, because that's what Jesus was talking about. Jesus was acting like there weren't two kinds of people. We didn't somehow have to measure or divide or have winners or losers or them or us. He treated everyone the same. The tax collectors and sinners and the religious leaders, they were treated the same. Now, the religious leaders weren't bad people. They just were scared because everything that they knew was getting turned upside down by this Jesus. But it begins to explain to me why the tax collectors and sinners crowded around Jesus. It's not that Jesus didn't care how they lived. Right? Jesus had things to say about sin, but Jesus didn't treat them as if they were defined by the mistakes they had made. He treated them like they were children of God, just like everybody else. Because of that, there was a lot of grumbling going on. So Jesus tells them a series of stories. And I'm going to read the whole 15th chapter here. So I'm going to go back to our reading today. It skips over the first two stories, which is, you missed the point because Jesus told 3 stories in a row. So I'm going to go back and tell the stories Jesus told them. He said, if any of you has 100 sheep and one of them gets lost, what do? Won't you leave the 99 in the field and go look for the lost sheep until you find it? And when you find it, you'll be glad, and you put it on your shoulder and you carry it home and you call your friends, your neighbors, you say, let's celebrate. I found my lost sheep. Jesus said, in the same way, there is more happiness in heaven because of one sinner who turns to God than 99 good people who don't need to. So Jesus told him another story. He said, what woman, if she has 10 silver coins and loses one of them, won't light a lamp and sweep the floor and look carefully until she finds it? And then when she finds it, she'll call her friends and neighbors and say, let's celebrate. I found the coin I lost. And Jesus said, in the same way, God's angels are happy when even one person turns to him. And Jesus told him another story. Once a man had 2 sons. The younger son said to the father, "Give me my share of the property." So the father divided his property between his two sons. Not long after that, the younger son packed up everything he owned and left for a foreign country where he wasted all his money in wild living. And he had spent everything. A bad famine spread across the land, and soon he had nothing to eat. He went to work for a man in that country, and the man sent him out to take care of his pigs. He would have been glad to eat what the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Finally, he came to his senses. He said, "My father's workers have plenty to eat, and here I am starving to death. I will go to my father. I'll say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against God and against you. I'm no longer good enough to be called your son. Treat me like one of your workers.'" And the younger son got up and started back to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt sorry for him, and he ran to his son and he hugged him and kissed him. And his father said, "Father, I've sinned against God and against you. I'm no longer good enough to be called your son." But the father said to the servants, "Hurry, bring the best clothes and put them on him. Give him a ring for his finger, sandals for his feet. Get the best calf and prepare it so we can eat and celebrate. This son of mine was dead and now has come back to life. He was lost and has now been found." And they began to celebrate. I'm going to pause the story there. Few stories are more powerful than that. This is the good news. Right? This is the gospel. God's love knows no bounds. Sooner or later, if we're honest, we will find ourselves like that son. Whether we've wandered off like the sheep or whether we've deliberately run away, we find we can't make it by ourselves. It's just too hard. And at that moment, God comes running to us, embracing us as his children, saying, "There's nothing you can do to stop me from loving you. It's pure grace." That is the gospel. That's the good news. It isn't more complicated than that. But the story isn't over. In fact, the real point of the story comes in the second part of the story, but we've run out of time. So you'll have to come back next week if you want to hear the end of the story, and we'll pick up where we left off.